Hello and welcome to the Low Code Cafe. This is episode number 141 for July 26, 2023. Today, our main topic is going to be building custom forms in Plantain app. So we'll be focusing on the basics of building forms. And we'll also be doing some other things, talking about hotfixes that are coming out in the product. My name is Dale Warner. I'm head of support for Plantain app. I'm joined today by Patrick Anderson, who is a technical success manager and is tasked with keeping me on track. The Low Code Cafe is an event we do every other Wednesday, 10 a.m. Central Time this hour. And it's an opportunity for us to provide you with updates, do some demonstrations, and mostly focus on hands-on coding. These run the gamut from very introductory level topics to very advanced topics, and today is an introductory level topic. We invite you to be a guest speaker. Some of our most successful episodes have been when we've had a guest speaker show off what they've built with the Plantain app product. All of these episodes are recorded and put out on our YouTube channel, the Low Code Cafe channel, or rather playlist from the Plantain app channel. It's youtube.com/Plantain app. You can use that QR code to sign up for it if you haven't already, and you can use the subscribe and alert bell so that you know when we post new things. So today we'll be doing some two things, the From the Trenches segment, talking about our hotfixes, but also then the major part, our low-code development segment. Do engage with us. You can use the chat window or Q&A form to ask a question. You can raise your hand if you want to talk, and by all means, give us some feedback. I'll ask Patrick at the appropriate time to put the links for our feedback form onto the chat. The next live webinar is scheduled for 2 weeks from today, August 9th. And so now we dive in. The From the Trenches segment, we are currently on version 1.25 of our product, and we have previously released 26 hotfixes, and there are 9 that have been released over the last 2 weeks since we met last. The first 3 that I'll talk about are having to do with Form Builder. And as always, we recommend that you install these hotfixes if you have the particular issue that is at hand, or have an environment that you can roll back. We don't recommend installing all hotfixes all the time, but if you need that particular thing and can take the time to test for it, by all means, you install and use them. So with the Form Builder, there were issues having to do with processing certain gzip responses. So this is when the server request action is used to retrieve information, and it was being responded to by in the format of a gzip. We weren't doing that appropriate in all cases, and so now we are. We had a certain field that wasn't working after the height was adjusted, and I wasn't familiar with that one, but if you're waiting on that one, it's available. And then the inline date and date time fields were not allowing input when they were disabled conditionally. So lots of little nuances that are getting fixed. In our listings builder, there was an issue having to do with query string filtering not working when the sync with URL prefix was empty. That was an oversight and something that got introduced accidentally in version 125. The UI, something about UI refresh on UI reset on auto refresh. I have to admit not being familiar with that one. We had a report that an issue having to do specifically with certain mobile phones, iPhones, that the filters were sometimes displayed out of place or out of view, and that has been corrected. And then if you try to filter an integer column and one of the entries was null, it wasn't working correctly. So now that's working. When you create an entity, you get to pick where the page gets placed in the menu, and it wasn't working correctly, and now it is. And there's a twofer change that happened. It's in one hotfix release, but there's actually two things in it. I'm just counting it as one, but workflows, when you're using save and test, that the output parameters are being displayed better. And also, we've long had a restriction that composite files, an option within the platform. If you've enabled that, it wasn't, it did not, you couldn't use Plankton app together with composite files enabled, and now apparently they've resolved that as well. So lots of good things coming out of development. We encourage you to engage with us in a separate meeting, the Low Code Campfire, which happens the same hour on Fridays, and that's every Friday. And that's an opportunity to get together and talk with us. Patrick and I are usually both there, but then also other low-code developers. And oftentimes we see people that have issues and questions about our product come away with answers or at least next steps. So very interactive meeting format. We encourage you to engage. This was the links that I was saying that Patrick would take care of for me. Thank you for doing that. So on your chat, you'll see you can register in advance for the Low Code Campfire. You can get to our recordings on YouTube, and a very good resource, the community portal. That is the place where you can ask questions that both we and the community review. And also there's a spot for putting user feedback, feature requests. So lots of good stuff there. And then there's the feedback form. So use that to let us know about things that you'd like to see in this Low Code Cafe, either coming up or comment on one that you've watched. So with that, we're going to dive right into hands-on low coding. We're going to build some custom forms within Plankton app. And so here's what we're trying to accomplish. That form building is a primary building block of Plankton app. And new users to Plankton app will often see that when you create an entity that or a data structure, that we're automatically generating some things for you that includes forms and listings, and those let you interact with the data. You can add and delete records and see them and search for them, but those things are primarily used as maintenance screens. You can use them as direct interface, but oftentimes you're going to want to implement special logic or special rules, and it's going to need to fit your situation, something that makes sense to your users rather than the automatically generated elements that we provide. So we wanted to address building a form from the ground up. And so this will give you an overview of our form building tool. This is part one. The form building tool is really, it has core concepts, but all the way through to advanced topics and lots of things in between. So today is just going to be focusing on a quick start on the building basics and give somebody new to the product and an understanding of what you can accomplish with forms. I assume that we'll have additional parts, and so we'll tie all these together so that somebody wanting to learn all about form building can follow the parts. Currently, we don't have the additional ones scheduled, but we will do those in the weeks and months to come. So again, today's focus is on a quick start, how to get something done, get an overview of what's going on with forms. And so our basic setup is going to be that we're going to create a page. The form module is called action form. We'll begin to configure it. We'll give it a name, and then we'll take a look at the static text tool to get us started, and then save and review and see where we've gone. So we'll follow these steps and then continue to expand on it so that you get a full understanding of at least what's possible to accomplish with Form Builder. So the presumption is, and I have one here, that you have a website and you have a page created, and we're not actually going to cover page creation today, but presumably you have gotten to the point where you're in Plankton app and have the ability to do pages. I'll just point to it that in our configuration section, there is a pages component, and you can create a new page there. I've already created the page. It's called 141 Form Building, referencing this episode of Low Code Café. But it's an empty page. And so we'll start from there. The first step we're going to do is add an action form. So within the platform, if you're using our page builder theme, you'll have a gear icon here to the right, and this will let you interact with things that are on the page. But when you want to add something new, you'll need to put the form into edit mode. And this assumes that you have edit rights to the page. If you don't see this pencil icon, you don't have edit rights to the page. But I'm going to click that, and you'll see the page change slightly. That gives me some additional things. So it's gone from a user mode to a administrative mode. In the edit mode, you have the ability to add a module. So I'm going to use that tool, add module, and look for action form in the list. It's listed as avt.actionform. You can click on it, and it gives you the ability to position it somewhere on the page. I'm just going to click and drag it onto the page into a wide area on the screen. So that is adding an action form to the page. We're now going to begin configuring it. And the first time that you do that you place something in action form on the page, there is a manage form. This is a one-time link that appears immediately after you drop it. After that, you have to know how to interact with it, and we'll talk about this. So the manage form gives you the choice of a blank form or a contact form. This is a very old system and has lots of different other choices, but the ones that you're likely going to see is blank form and contact form. And I'm today going to deal with doing a blank form. So I'll just click start on that, and it will set up this form as a blank form. And slowly, slower than I would have expected, the blank form is built for us. And so we see this interface where it has the form builder. This is the name of the form, and we have some buttons to interact with it, and some various areas that we're going to explore today. The first one that I recommend doing is naming the form. And so the purpose of what we're going to build today is the ability to sign up or join a mailing list. So I'm going to name this form the sign up form. So let's see the sign up form, and that name changes there. And when we click save, it will be applied, and we'll see how that works with our system when we do that. So we've named the form, and then there is a field type called static text. And this is a way that you can put information onto your form that it doesn't do anything. It's just informational to the end user. That can be added by using the add fields button. And when you add a field, there's a number of different field types that are shown. I'm going to focus right now on the list that comes up when you hover text. And in that, you'll see that one of the ones that are listed is static text. And so I'll click on that. What it opens up is a static text field. We can give it a name or a title, and that will also give it an ID, and those things will become more important as we go along. But I'm just going to give it the title of Overview, and you'll notice that the ID changed to Overview as well. The content of this is going to be that we want to say join our mailing list. We're giving an instruction or an encouragement to the end user that's viewing the page, and so we're telling them what this is about. And we're going to stop there and just see the impact of what we're doing. So we'll save it, and after you've saved, you can use the back button. The back button brings us to our page, and now instead of an empty page, we can see that we have join our mailing list is displayed. If we use the, again, there's multiple ways to do things. There is, if you're using the page builder theme, you get the page builder icon, and you can go into edit mode on that form by, notice that our name now appears sign up form. We can click on sign up form and it will bring us back into edit mode. That's one way to access the form. It's going to be the same screen that we were looking at moments ago, where we can name it and interact with it. We can make additional changes to this and save them. And then when we click either of these icons, this closes the form. This refreshes the page, so you get to see your changes immediately. But either of those buttons close the slide out form where you're interacting with it. So that's one way that you can continue to editing your form. Another way is to use this edit icon here at the bottom, putting the page into edit mode. And so once it's in edit mode, in addition to the tools that we used earlier where you could add a module, we now have some additional tools that if you hover this corner where you see these tools in the top right, you can see that you can manage the form or manage it in full screen. This is the ability to edit the form. So I'm going to choose manage the form in full screen, and we flip back to the view that we started with. So we can make changes and then save and test again. So we have done our setup, and we're ready to move on. The first thing that we're going to, let's see, I'm sorry, we've also talked about editing a form that's on the page using the page builder gear, or using the edit mode and manage the form. Now, the one that I did was editing on the same page, but you can also do it in multiple tabs. And let me show you what that looks like. It's often handy if you're doing a lot of development to get the form, to be able to see the form, but also see the editing at the same time. You can do that by hovering that manage form, and in your browser, right-clicking and choosing open the link in a new tab or window, whichever you prefer. But by opening it that way, you see what your user is going to see, but on a separate tab, you see the development of that particular form, and you're able to make changes and save them and then see them very quickly. And so we'll do that mode so that it's easy and quick for us to move on, but any of those methods will work. So we're going to start designing a form. This again is a join our mailing list form. And so what we're going to use is we're going to have a couple of fields on the form, one to collect their name, one to collect their email address, and then a button that they click, they say join. It's their name and email address somehow is going to get added to the email to their mailing list. And so that will be the basic elements on the form. We'll also deal a little bit with layout so that the form looks nice in your, has the look and feel that you want it to have. And then when they click the button, we're going to want some actions to take place. We're going to want to send an email to the administrator of that list. that says that they want to join, gives the name and email address so that they can be manually added to the email list. And then we want to confirm to the user that they have signed up. There's a lot of options that we'll take as a designer on how this is going to play out, but we'll pick one. There's no right answer, no single right answer, but this is the basic direction that we're going to go. So starting with fields, we need to add a name and an email address field onto the form. So we go to our form design and we can add fields. This is where you have to have some idea of the various types of fields that are available. I am going to add a text field that is what we call a text box. The text box is just going to let somebody type some information there. And so this is the text box is what I'm going to use to collect the name. The title of that is going to be name. And we'll see how this comes out in the interface, but doing nothing more than that, just adding a field for name and saving it. We'll now return to our page and refresh. And the form is now prompting for a name and has provided a place for you to fill in the blank. So that's a good start. And then we also want to add an email address. So we're going to, and I have to take a look, and this is a spot where you'll do some exploring. The fields are grouped together under topics, and so we're looking for the email address field, and that is that, do you happen to remember where that is? There it is, under user. So there's an email field under user, and that's the one that we're going to use. If you don't know where it is, there is a search box, and that can be handy. You just type that you're looking for the email field, and it'll find it for you out of the list and just present it to you. So either of those methods work to find it. And so now we have email. Maybe we want to call this the email address. And again, we're just naming it and taking a look at how this shows up on the form. So we go back to our page and refresh. So now we see we have name and email address. Notice this form is still in edit mode and has all kinds of lines on it to show some of the editing tools. I'm going to use the close button. So this page will now render more like what your user is going to see it. So we have name, email address, and as we said, we want a join button as well. So we'll return to our form design and drop down here to the buttons area and add a button. The title of the button that we want, it suggests submit, but we want to join. So we're going to add join to the, name it as the join button and save it. And again, refresh the page to see what we have. So now we have name, email address, and join. It doesn't do anything, but it does, it gives us the basic framework for the thing that the information that we want to, that we expect from our users. So we'll type in a name and an email address, and notice we're already getting some logic. The email field is not accepting anything except a valid email address. And so it's complaining that I didn't give it a good email address. And until it is a valid, or at least in the form of an email address, it will continue to show that error message. We can click our join button and the page will refresh, but nothing happens because we haven't given it any logic yet. But at least we have the structure of entering information. We have our fields, we have our button, and now we can work with layout a little bit. Visually, we can make a lot of choices about how this how this form looks. One of the choices that's easy to see the impact is that we have a structure where the name is showing to the left of the field. So email address is showing to the left of the field. If we return to our sign-up form and look at settings, we'll find that this is the label align choice, and the labels, the fields are aligned to the right of the labels. I want to do a top alignment and hit save. And with that one change, and again refreshing, we'll now see that the names of the field appear above the field. And so that is a simple change that you can make. Let's see what else. In the layout, we can see that we can see each of the field names. And so we have an overview field, the name field, the email address, and we can manipulate them a little bit. These are in what's called a bootstrap layout, a 12 column. So the name, for example, is taking up 12 of the 12 columns. If we click and drag from the and move things around, we can, for example, set up so that it's taking 6 of a 12 column wide layout. And so now the name field will be much shorter. We can also drag the email address field up into this empty box. So now these 12 columns, however wide your display is, it's divided up into 12 columns. Now the name is going to take up 6 columns, and the email address is going to take up 6 columns, all on the same line. So we save that and refresh. So now name and email address appear on the same line and side by side. So those are a couple of things that you can do on the layout. There are many more. With that, I will point out that our layout is responsive. And so as the screen gets narrower, I'm going to make this be a smaller screen layout. As the screen gets narrower, we'll see that the name and email address flipped to being one on top of the other. And so if you viewed this same form with a mobile device, a phone with a narrow screen, you're going to see this automatically stack. So that's kind of a built-in feature, the responsiveness. And as you're designing a form, if you're expecting users to work with it on a phone, you might narrow down your workspace, or just view the form on a phone so that you can see what it looks like. For my design, I want to make this join button appear all the way to the right. And so I'm going to move things around one more time. I'm going to make the name narrower. I'm going to make the email address also take 4 columns. Sometimes you have to drag around a little bit to find the right size. So these two will be the same size. And then I'm going to put my join button over in the empty space to the right. We'll save that and look at it one more time. I'll just point out this little green box is my password manager, and it's popping up here. And you won't see that unless you have the same password manager. So we have name, email address, and the join button next to it. And so let's move on. Let's bring this form to life. There are actions that we can add, and when we click the join button, we want to send an email to the administrator of the form. So let's see where that is in our design. As we look at the fields and we look at the button, you can expand any of these. So notice if I click on the name field and all of its properties will show. I click again and it closes up. So I want to expand the join button and see what's available to me. There's lots of different properties, and I'm going to skip most of them for now. They're all important, but we can focus on the area we want to work. There is an on-click handler. This means that when you click the button, you want it to do something, and this section is going to handle your click. So in this case, we're going to want to add something here, and the things that are available to add here are called actions. And there are many actions depending on what you have, what add-ons that you have installed in Plant App. Your action menu might have more or less information than mine, but everything that's here is an action that you can use in the form to do something. The one that I am interested in is the email action. I want to send an email out when the button is clicked. So I'm going to add that, and the on-click handler now has one action connected with it, the send email action. When I open it up, I can edit it. So let's work through the properties of this to get it to do the work. First of all, there's a description, and this is a comment only to you as the developer. It's just as a good practice to remind yourself about what it is that you were doing here, what you were intending. There's lots of different other additional things. We're going to focus on the things that relate particularly to emails. There's a connector, and that's a little bit of an advanced topic. We're just going to use the one that it suggests here. There's another one here, the default SMTP. But when you're doing an email, things have to go out using some form of an email SMTP server. And so this is something that gets configured in Plant an App, and then you use the connector. So you'll want to pick something off of this list or leave it blank, and it'll use the default one. I'm not going to fill in a from address. I'm just going to leave it empty to use the system default. If you were defining a system, you would probably want to fill in an email address that's where this email is going to be from, but it has to be authorized for your SMTP server to be acceptable. We want to send this to somebody, and I'm going to send it to myself, but you would fill in the address where you wanted the email to go, whoever the list administrator was. You're typically not going to want to check the send me email to all users, because otherwise because that feature is one that forces the email links to go to everybody that is signed up on your website. Not a commonly used feature. Then you're going to see other common email type of fields. So this one is if they hit reply to the email, who does it go to? Or we're going to have any CCs or blind carbon copies that are part of this email. I don't need either of those or any of those in this case. And so the subject of my email is going to be sign up form. A new user, a user has and I'm going to choose an HTML format. And have this is Albert keeping me on track. I just misspelled my email address, so we're going to take care of that. And I have all kinds of phone stuff going off here, so I'll have to tell it to stop. But now I've got it right here, Plant an App. So HTML format, and then this is the body of the email, what I wanted to say. Please add somebody to the email address, to the email list. Well, who do we want to add? We really want to add the people that we want to add this name and this email address to our email, so that when this email is received, we'll know what it's about. It's specific to that form submission. There are some tools here that you can use to append field. And so you can say append the name or the email address, and what it will do if you pick that it'll say name : name, and I'm also going to pick email address, and it says the email address. So this format with brackets is a special format called a context token, or oftentimes just referred to as a token, and it's like a variable. The name variable or name token that's from above in the form is going to get inserted into this email. Likewise with the email address, we can clean up the formatting a little bit. There's an extra space there that I didn't want, but that's all we need to do. If we had other files that needed to be attached to the email, that's available to us as well. But that's really all we need to do to send an email. So now this action can be closed up. That's one action that we can take. The other thing that we said we wanted to do on our actions is that we want to confirm to the user that their sign up has been processed. And that can be done in a number of ways, but I'm going to add an action. I'm going to make it be a little pop-up on the screen. We call those a toast message. And so I am going to display a toast message and stop execution. It's going to pop up, and then that's the last thing that's going to happen. So so we'll have a box that pops up that says your submission is confirmed. We'll say thank you, and we'll also append the name. We'll clean this up a little bit. Thank you, name. We will add you to the list. So that's going to pop up, and now we have some other settings to set. By default, this is going to show up for 1,000 milliseconds. That's pretty precise, but 1,000 milliseconds is a second. So maybe we want this message to pop up for 10 seconds. So I'll add a 0 to it. And I want it to come up right in the middle and center of the screen. And the other thing I want to do is to make this be a success, because we're going to get a little bit different coloring depending on whether we pick a success or a warning or an error kind of a choice. So success should come up green. If we need to, we can add color instructions as well, but that should give us what we need. And I'm going to also click to allow them to close that, so they don't have to wait the full 10 seconds. They can, once they read the message, they can click it and go on. All right, so we have added the logic that we said that we wanted to do. So now let's see if it works. We will refresh the screen and fill in the form. And actually, yeah. So with that, we'll click the join button and see what we get. So what we would hope would happen is that we're going to see the toast message happen here, but then the email itself, there it is. Your submission is confirmed. Thank you, Dale Warner. We will add you to the list. And now I'm going to look in my inbox and find that, and bring that over so you can see what it looks like. I'm looking in my Gmail here. And yes, we see it. So there was a subject sign up form. A user has signed up for a mailing list. And it says, Dear Dale, please add somebody to the email list. And it says who to add, the information that came off of the form. So we succeeded in our objectives. We sent an email and we confirmed the sign up. As you're doing this, you'll probably find that you'll iterate through and fine tune a little bit. So if you want to open up the join button and find your on-click handler actions again. Maybe you want to fine-tune the email a little bit to say that, for example, the subject, instead of saying a user has signed up for our mailing list, maybe we want to say Dale Warner has signed up for our mail list. Well, that is this token name can be added to that. So we can, instead of saying a user, we can say name, and we can just type it, or we can get it from above. So let's see how we would get it from above. I'm going to remove that out, and notice that when you're looking at name, the form field that's on the screen, there's some tools over here. There's one that will allow you to delete, and if you click it, that'll turn red, and the next time you save it, the name would be gone. We don't want that, so I'm going to click it again. There's a clone field button that would give us a copy of name to do something else with. We don't need that either, but there's this one here, copy field ID as a token. And that's the one I'm going to click, and it says it's copied to the clipboard. So now that I've copied it, I can come find where I want to use it here in the subject. Where is the subject? And I can just simply paste it here. Now, it doesn't have brackets around it, so that is only partially helpful. We'll actually have to add the brackets around it. If you just said name without the brackets, then your subject would say name has signed up for our mailing list. But with the brackets, that's a signal to that the token, it is a token and will be expanded. And so the value of name will be put there. So this is the iteration I was talking about. You do it, and then you try it out and you see if it works the way that you want, and then try it again. So we'll refresh and make another submission. We'll put Patrick on our mailing list. Sure, that's his email address, and we'll hit join. Again, we should get the confirmation message. And hopefully here we'll see a email. And so now we see the subject of the email is Patrick Anderson has signed up for a mailing list. So now the email that's going to our administrator, our make-believe administrator, is a little bit more personal, a little bit more informational. So that's the quick start. We'll dive into some more details here as we go forward, but this should give you an idea that you can design a form that has a specific purpose. So you're going to want to collect the information in fields that you need from the user. You can have buttons to do things with that information. You can format it as you wish. And then those buttons have actions. You could have, and so there are many different kinds of actions that you can do. And so we'll explore all of that as we continue to move forward. So what are our next steps? Well, there are other field types besides text fields, and so that the first one was text box, and we also used email. But there's other things called like large text or numbers or drop downs or check boxes. And so let's talk about how to explore on those a little bit, because a lot of this is a lot of low coding is just can be done through a little simple exploration. So let's explore. Let's say that we want them to explain, tell us a little bit about themselves so that we know whether or not to include them on our email list. So in our fields, we can add a field. And if we go look at our text fields, there are a number of different types, but one of them is called large text. So when we do large text, we can say the title is Tell us about yourself. And The ID that it came up with, it's harder to see. I'm going to uncheck this box so you can see it, but it came up with an ID called Tell Us About Yourself, all run together. Well, I'm going to rename that by unchecking the auto box. I can type whatever, I can call it whatever I want. So now this thing is called About the User. And I'll refer to it by that instead of by that Tell Us About Yourself automatically generated ID. So let's save that and see how it comes out on the screen when we refresh. And a large text box looks like this. It accepts many lines, and it's defaults. It's the full width of the screen, so it gives them a lot of room to tell us about themselves. If we want to work with the format of that, as we have with other things, maybe we rein that in a little bit to stick with the width of the name and the email address. And so again, the layout lets us choose how that works a little bit. And we'll refresh and see that change. So yeah, now the form doesn't take over quite so much. Tell us about yourself. There's another property of the large text fields that might be useful. As we look down on it, we can see that it's set up for 10 rows. If we really needed to give them a lot of room, maybe we want to increase that to 15 rows. I'll do that just to illustrate. There are a lot of these properties that are inside of, as you open up a field, that are custom to the particular field that you're working with. There's some that are standard, and we'll talk about some of those, but now this is a little bit taller. It'll accept a little bit more information. There really is no limit on this until we give it one about how much information is there. Of course, we have collected the information on the form. When they hit it, it's available to us, but we haven't done anything with it. So when you make a change to the form, oftentimes you're going to want to change the button that the buttons that go with that to incorporate it. So for example, in the email, we're probably going to want to append a field that is the Tell Us About Yourself field, and the answer to Tell Us About Yourself now has this About the User to it. So with those couple of simple changes, now we're collecting more information. It's not, and the large text is expansive and not limited to just what you can put on one line, so they can put lots and lots of information there. Let's explore a little bit more and see what else that we could add. So exploring a little bit in our text fields, there is another one called a number. So maybe we want to ask them for their years of experience. And it's going to be a number that they're going to answer. And so this will collect it for it. And so we'll save that and see what that looks like. So notice the years of experience now show up, and it's a big wide field. That's not very, we'll have to clean up where this is placed. But notice since it's a number field, it has this up and down arrow stuff. And so you can click up or down and change the number, or you can just type a number, but it's not going to let it's an integer field. It's not going to let you type in a fraction decimal point. So yeah, so let's clean up where this is placed. And so now let's work with our layout a little bit. Let's say that we don't want, we want to put it up here in this area where the join button has been. We'll get join button onto a new row all by itself. So they'll make some room so we can bring years of experience up here. And then the join button really needs to be below about the user. So you can use these handles here to the left to drag it down below. Doesn't need to take up the whole width of the screen. It's a button, it won't anyway, but I'm going to visually just narrow this down so that I can see about what the screen might look like. So with that change, we can refresh. Now we see the join button is below, and this years of experience appears up at the top. Now there's as we explore, it'd probably be a great time to talk about one of the very common things with a form that you might want to make some fields required. So for example, if they don't provide their name and email address, you don't want to let them even submit this form. And so that is done by a property of the field. So if we open up the name field and scroll to the bottom of it, there is a section called validation. If you open validation, you can check the checkbox that says it's required. And now the form knows it's not going to let them advance until they provide a name. We'll do the same thing with email address. In the validation section, we'll see that it's required. One of the things that makes an email address field different than other fields is that it has a custom validator called email address. So this is the thing that is enforcing that the field is an email address. There's other kinds of other kinds of validators that you can take advantage of if you're for example, if you had a text field that you really want to be in the format of a Discover card, you can choose Discover card number, but we're not going to fool with this one. This must be an email address, and it is required now to move on. So let's see the impact of that. If we let that save and then refresh the form, it's now going to enforce that these fields get filled in. If we click the join button, it's not going to advance until the name and email address is filled in. You can submit. Even with a blank tell us about yourself, it will submit, because we didn't say that one was required, nor did we say years of experience was required. We have to be very careful to keep up with what we're doing, because on our button, the send email includes the name, the email address, and about the user, but it didn't include our newest addition, the years of experience. So always as a developer, you have to remember what the impact of the changes that you're making have on other parts of your form. So now we've corrected that issue. Let's explore a little bit. And again, I'm going to close up the button so we can see what else. Maybe we also want to collect a phone number. And so in our text fields, we'll find that we have phone as a field. We can just leave it as named as the default, it's phone. And yet we know from a layout perspective, we want this to appear someplace. And so maybe we'll make it be to the right of about the user. And we're going to clean up the things that we know that we need, rather than doing it in multiple steps. We'll put the phone number on the email as well. We want it to be higher. We can cut it out of here and paste it. Maybe I didn't want it below the tell us about yourself. Maybe in the same way, tell us about yourself, because that's long. Maybe I'll make it go at the end. So you can work with the formatting of this however you want. Notice this is a full-fledged text editor. So, for example, if you wanted to bold something, maybe it was bolded. Yep, that was already bolded. So maybe if I wanted to italicize the email address, you can change your formatting on that too, and that will show up in the email. Okay, so we've added phone, and we can see how that looks now as we refresh. Notice that phone comes in, that it has some properties, some extra properties, like what country are we talking about, and it came up defaulting to Afghanistan and the format for an Afghanistan number. If I typed a United States type phone number, it's telling me the phone number is too long. The phone field is very smart to know countries, and but we might need a little bit of configuration. So, for example, for the initial country, we might want to say that it's US, and we might not want to let them select another country, but we'll let them select another country. So let's try it that way. And this again is the beauty of low code, being able to quickly interact with the form, see what changes get made, see if it does what you expect. So now it's defaulting to the United States, which is a 1+ kind of format. And if I just type some digits, it automatically formats it nicely for me. So lots of work that the form is doing for you when you tell it that you want it to use a form field, a phone field. So going back to where we came from, we can, just wanted you to be aware that there are other field types, and that you can explore using them, or you can look in our documentation to see what you'll get out of them, and then you can incorporate them. We're about done for today, but I'll just talk about the things that we'll do in future episodes. Our form that we've done is kind of the presumption that it starts out blank and the user fills it in, but you might not want it to start out blank. There might be values that, like you might already know the name of the user, and you want that to come up pre-populated. And so there's a way to initialize the forms with values. There's a way to do some manipulation of the information that comes in. Those tokens that we were working with, those are we call them tokens, but they're variables. And so you could make create a token that had some logic behind it. For example, if the form, the sign-up form, was coming from some other website and it had a source code embedded in the query string, in the URL, that perhaps the form would automatically say that this listing came from my web page, or this listing came from an email that we sent out. And so you could provide a source. If there was no source, then it would say the source was not provided. And either way, that could be in the email that goes out to the user. So when we explore this next time, we'll talk more about how to do that, and then include that source statement in the email. And then in working with data, now instead of sending an email to an administrator, that we might want to actually save the data onto our system and then be able to do more things with it. So that's another next step. I want to thank you for attending, and hope that we've explained form building at an introductory level to you, and have enabled you to begin doing form building in your applications. And we look forward to advancing the topic. Thanks.